Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're super excited. We are taking on a worthwhile endeavor at Life Success and Legacy. Our intention is to honor Nelson Nash, the man, as well as the infinite banking concept. We're going to create a series of resources, including podcasts and text, as a resource for others who want to truly understand with depth and clarity what Nelson shared in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, as well as the many seminars and think tanks that we were fortunate to have attended during his life. So who is this intended audience? Well, we will use Nelson Nash's own words. It is written for the layman, not for financial advisors, but all life agents should be thoroughly knowledgeable of its content and practice. So whether you are an individual, part of a family, a business owner, or a life insurance agent, this is for you. So sit back, relax, and we will walk you through becoming your own banker step by step so you can reference the parts you want to revisit at your own pace. And we might have a little fun along the way. Hey, thanks for joining us for our next edition of the Life Success and Legacy podcast. Chris Bay here with Mike Everett, the founder of Life Success and Legacy. Mike, how you doing today?
Hey, Chris, what's up?
Going great. We had a fantastic virtual boot camp this weekend. Had some really great questions and appreciated people coming in from all over the country joining us. And I know you've been busy talking to people this morning and sharing with them about IBC. It's always energizing, isn't it?
Very much so.
So for our listeners, we've been busy in the previous podcast walking through part one of Becoming Your Own Banker. And as we always encourage people, if you don't have a copy of this, we'd recommend you go to our website at lifesuccesslegacy.com and get yourself a copy of this so you can go through it and follow along as we teach. So what we've done is we've gone through part one of Becoming Your Own Banker, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of these sections. Nelson talks about how the concept got started. He touches on imagination, the grocery store. We went in depth to the grocery store. He identifies the problem. He discusses banks and how they function, the ones that we already know about, the ones that are out there on the corner. And then he talks about how to create your own banking system through dividend-paying life insurance. In our last podcast, we touched on the basic understandings. And today what we're going to do is just briefly touch on the review of part one, which is on page 27. And Nelson opens up with the importance of imagination, that it's more important than knowledge. And in that chapter, he uses an example of a child who thinks differently and comes up with this really amazing solution, which in some ways we could be saying the same thing about Nelson Nash in that he thinks differently. And I think that's why he came up with Becoming Your Own Banker. Mike, you got to follow Nelson around. You were friends. He was your mentor. You got to witness how he thinks differently about things.
Well, I'll tell you, the awesome thing about this is he shared story after story after story about life and living and even dying, even dying in the early stages of this, of how infinite banking could work for you, for me, for others who are listening. And when he says the importance of imagination is more important than knowledge, I'm just telling you, it's called the infinite banking concept for a reason. There are things that even our clients are coming to us today and asking us, would this work using the infinite banking concept? And so Life Success and Legacy and our team, we are not the end all with when it comes to IBC. There are so many ways, there's so many variations, there's so many items that can work with this, and it really takes just a very minor amount of imagination. But boy, when we have some people come to us with a big imagination, it really it's a great opportunity for us to learn from them as well. And that's the awesome thing about it. So this is a real give and take situation when you're talking about somebody coming to us with just some another item or another thing that they've thought about, that they've imagined in their own minds of how infinite banking can work.
Yeah, we certainly have not cornered the market on infinity, have we?
No, no, and I'm glad.
One of the things that I think about with Nelson, in the chances that I had to listen to him, when he talks about imagination being more important than knowledge, and I'm more kind of concrete, linear thinker. You, I think, are more creative, big picture, which is why we, as a team, our whole team,
Yeah,
really complement each other. For me, when I think about, okay, how can I step into that imagination piece? What I do is I think about the opposite of what most people have taught me or I've heard.
yep,
And I go completely opposite and I go, so I wonder if that might be possible. And then I kind of backwards engineer, work my way back there because I feel like that's what helps me get out of my rut sometimes is, okay,
yeah.
here's what I've been taught, here's what I've heard. I'm going to go completely opposite of that and open up my mind to see if I can start to imagine something creative out of it. So,
Well, you mentioned a great word there was rut. I'm telling you, so many people come to us with these gigantic financial ruts in their brain, and it's almost sometimes impossible to get those people out of their ruts. But I'm going to go back to something that I've said time and time again. Nelson said, "It is a matter of how you think."
mhm.
And I'm going to tell you, if you think like what's going on in our world right now with the 401ks, the IRAs, the mutual funds, I'm going to tell you what, you're going to be stuck in that same rut for the rest of your life. And this is the awesome thing about it. We don't want to drag you out of the rut, but the knowledge that we're providing for you, the education that we're providing for you, should gently pull you out of that rut to be able to see, to be able to create the opportunity to imagine exactly where you might be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. And that's when infinite banking really becomes a concrete thought process for people.
Yeah, and it's so easy to fall back into that rut. That's
Oh,
why even this last Saturday when we had our boot camp, we had existing clients who've been clients of ours for years who still come back to our boot camps
yep,
because it's so easy, even for us, it's easy to fall back into those ruts. So number two here on page 27 in the review, the grocery store business, the value of learning how to get into a business in which you are a consumer of the same thing that you sell. And we went in depth on the grocery store. You did a
yeah,
great job of teaching on that. But the bottom line, in my opinion, is the very last sentence there is, don't steal. Don't steal from your business. And this applies to our banking system in that, yes, we can take loans against our policies. And
yep,
the life insurance company doesn't care if we make payments on that. But for ourselves, we want to be honest bankers because we'll break the system if we're not honest bankers. We want to
yep,
make payments. We want to pay retail for the use of our own money.
yep.
All right. Number three, the money problem. Um, this one hits hard for me, and it's that whole idea of average America is spending 34.5% on interest on their debt, and yet they're trying to get maybe 10% on their return on their 401k or their mutual funds or whatever.
Yep.
And that just, when I learned that, it just opened my eyes to think differently. How
I'll
often do
tell.
we see people
Yeah.
facing that problem?
Well, we almost every person that comes to the table is facing some kind of problem. So, what we try to get people to do is think about their own personal situation. So, I always say, what are you getting on your 401k right now? And I'll get anywhere from 8 to 12%. And I said, is that 8 to 12% before taxes and before fees? And that right there makes them think.
Yeah.
But yet they're paying on a mortgage, they're paying on a car loan, they're paying on credit card debt, they're paying on the student loan debt. So let's just even dumb this down just a little bit more. Let's just say that every person listening to this podcast is paying maybe 15 to 20% on the interest after taxes. If there was a chance, I mean, just the slightest chance that we could forego the 15 to 20% that you're paying on all your outside debt and show you how to put that 15 to 20% in your pocket annually, would you care about the 8 to 12% that you're getting on your 401k? You wouldn't.
Right.
So part of the thing is to get people to think we are in a problem, by the way. The problem that was designed for us was created by the government, was created by our business schools. I hate to say it like that, but we're helping people think differently about the dollars that flow in and out of their hands. It's that simple. And right now, most of the people are not controlling those dollars. We're showing you, we're giving you a concrete way to where you can control those dollars in and out.
Economic value added is the piece there on number 3. Nelson says, learn the importance of the economic value added concept. That part is pretty easy, I think, when people have debt and they're making payments to somebody else. They say, oh, well, that makes sense. I should turn that money and then send it to myself where I get to reuse it. Where I find the challenge for people to rethink their thinking is when they are debt free, or
Yep.
maybe they've come from a situation where they pay cash for things all the time. It's very difficult sometimes for them to think about charging themselves for the use of their own money.
It
So if
is.
that is you, if you're a listener and you struggle with that of charging yourself for the use of your own cash, I'd recommend you go back to that podcast and listen to it when we talk about economic value added.
Well, and also go back to the actual grocery store in the book and or the chapter on First National Bank of Midland, Texas. I'm going to tell you, they're very, very clear about how you can apply economic value added. Very
Yeah.
simple.
And with the bank in Midland, Texas, you can see the kind of trouble you can get in when you don't pay for your own money.
Yes.
It'll just destroy it. Okay, so number 4, creating a bank like the ones you already know about. Very similar. Nelson makes the connection between starting a grocery store and starting a bank, and how involved and long it takes to get a bank started. And this is where he's like teaching the concepts of starting a bank and then saying, but there's a simpler way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He's basically showing you the amount of money that you're going to have to spend to have your own grocery store, or the amount of money that you're going to have to put aside to have your own real bank. But there's a simpler way, and it's using dividend paying whole life insurance. And
Yeah.
that's part of what you get when you get us as a team as well. You're going to get the breakdown of how exactly that whole process happens. Very, very simple.
And Nelson then he highlights again, don't steal, which I think is so important.
Yep.
Number 5, he said, talks about how a dividend paying life insurance policy works. He talks about the diagram on page 26, which in the last podcast, you did a really great job of walking through the flow of money, how there's a massive pool out there that everybody is paying into, but we don't have control of it. Or in other
Yep.
words, the pool rules are not in our benefit. But by creating an IBC policy, we can actually control an ever increasing part of that pool, and those rules will benefit us. The last one there, the capitalization phase. Mike, you always talk about this, how important the capitalization phase is.
Well, I've got to go to principle number 1, think long term first. So most of us, because of the way we've been taught, the way we've been raised, we think that we can go out and invest and make immediate money. It just doesn't work that way, especially when you design a life insurance policy for the infinite banking concept purposes. So there's got to be a capitalization phase. So the bottom line is you've got to think like a business owner. You must think like a business owner. So in all reality, how long does it take for a business to become profitable? We'll just use profitable in quotes. 5 to 7 years. Okay. So there's a certain amount of time that we have to actually plow in dollars into our business before it becomes profitable. And so part of what we've got to do is we've got to help people think long term, and we've got to help people think about the capitalization phase. And when we design our infinite banking concept plans, not everybody gets the same kind of plan because not everybody has the same debt load, not everybody has the same cash flow. So the capitalization phase is different for every single person. So part of what we've got to make sure that we're doing is creating a plan to where they're going to be better off financially tomorrow. So Nelson says right in this little paragraph, don't expect to get rich overnight. With the infinite banking concept plan, it is a long-term process. There must be discipline for several years, and you are not going to get rich overnight. But part of what we're trying to do is create a system to where later on, the rewards, the financial rewards, the rewards for you and your family down the road are pretty expansive. So if we can get people to think about this and take time and take discipline, then they're going to be able to create something that literally will go from generation to generation to generation.
In Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, he doesn't show anybody taking loans for the first 4 years. And a lot of times the people, their introduction to IBC is reading Nelson's book. That to them is just too long of a situation, time frame. And the reality is most of our clients are taking loans against their policies probably in the first 2 weeks of having their policy in place. But that's only if we can utilize it to turn wind current. And that's obviously right. Is it. But we do have some clients who they're plowing in premium deposits for the first 2 to 3 to 4 years. Because the only debt they have is maybe a mortgage or a massive student loan. And they're not turning wind current on that. So I just want people to know that it doesn't mean that everybody is waiting, 4 years to take policy loans and turn the wind current. That's actually rare for us. Most people, we're turning the wind current right away. But absolutely, it's not a get rich quick scheme. In fact, we had one client who said at one point, he said, "Oh, I get it. This is the get rich slow scheme." We're like, that's a good way to say it. That's a good way to say it.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Mike. This wraps up our the review of part 1 that we've gone through. So we've been through the first part of Becoming Your Own Banker. Our next podcast, we're going to jump into part 2, and it starts off with the human problems and understanding Parkinson's law, which will be fun. Always fun to remind ourselves of where we're falling short in our discipline.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So listeners, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Please check out our podcasts at lifesuccesslegacy.com. If you don't have a copy of Nelson's book, please get one there as well. And we look forward to you joining us for our next podcast.